The Minnesota Timberwolves are going back to the Western Conference Finals after taking down the Golden State Warriors in 5 games. The obvious elephant in the room of Steph Curry getting injured in Game 1 and Jimmy Butler having a pretty underwhelming series considering what they expected from him. Jimmy Butler averaged 20 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 7 assists, which honestly doesn't sound that bad, but considering the best player and Steph Curry was out, you were hoping for a bigger, more playoff Jimmy type of series. Jimmy Butler hasn't had a huge playoff run since they went to the finals a few years ago, so maybe expecting this out of Jimmy Butler could have been wrong on us. But the fact you traded all this to bring in a guy that should be winning the minutes when Steph Curry's off the court, and if a reason Steph Curry had to miss games, Jimmy Butler could still be the number one option, it simply did not pan out. This leads to wonder what is next for the Golden State Warriors, because obviously after the comments about Kuminga and looking off Steph Curry, it's a pretty high chance that he will not be on the team next year. Maybe they move on from a Kevon Looney who gave the minutes this season. I'm not really too sure what they do with Moses Moody as well. AirPods might have a role in this team, but it would not surprise me if they do a consolidation trade for some of these younger assets to try to find a more seasoned big man or a better scorer off the bench. The fact the Minnesota Timberwolves were able to win this series without Anthony Edwards being a superstar speaks volume to how good the rest of the team played. Now, of course, Anthony Edwards was not bad, in which he averaged 26 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 5.5 assists. After the explosion of Jaden McDaniels in the first round against the Lakers, really in the second round against Golden State Warriors, it was Julius Randle having probably his best playoff series of his career, and through the first 2 series, the best playoff run of his career, really kind of flipping the entire narrative that he is a bad playoff performer. I can honestly say out of all these second round series, this is probably the series I watched the least just because of the injury of Steph Curry. It was pretty much always in the favor of the Minnesota Timberwolves, but that is not to take anything away from the Timberwolves because they still had to go out and earn their victories. And again, for the second year in a row, going back to the Western Conference Finals, well, they'll take on either the OKC Thunder or the Denver Nuggets. And honestly, I like the chances of the Timberwolves against either one of those teams. They beat Denver last year, and Denver doesn't look any better this year than they did last year, and OKC has shown signs of still being a young team in the playoffs this year. This trade between the New York Knicks and the Minnesota Timberwolves is kind of looking like a win-win. Both teams are now advancing to their respective Eastern Conference Finals and Western Conference Finals, and both players, whether it be Julius Randle or Karl-Anthony Towns, have been huge second options for their team. While it's still not a guarantee that Julius Randle is a Minnesota Timberwolves next season because of his contract situation, that was kind of the whole idea of the Timberwolves trading away Karl-Anthony Towns, was to try to get themselves some financial freedom. But after this playoff run, it's going to be hard for them to get rid of Julius Randle because obviously he's going to deserve and demand a good amount of money, still probably less than Cat would make. So there's a real good chance he's going to be on this team next year. And if he can give you consistent performances like this Minnesota team is going to be scary for the years to come. You have to worry about OKC. They have a very, very young team. You have to worry about the San Antonio Spurs, another very, very young team. But the Minnesota Timberwolves and Anthony Edwards being only 23 years old are going to be a team to be reckoned with in the Western Conference for years to come. I'm very curious to see how Steve Kerr comes back next season after having a pretty poorly coached playoff run, in my opinion. I think it was very strange and unusual to be in the second round of the NBA playoffs and still be putting together new lineups. And I completely understand that you are without Steph Curry, your number one guy, but it just felt like Steve Kerr was putting too many players on the court. They played 10 to 12 people every single game. And honestly, at playoff time, it's just not really an option to be playing that deep because you need your best players on the floor. If you're a Warriors fan, I wouldn't be too down about this series. Obviously, you lost. That's a bummer. But Steph Curry will be back next season. You have Jimmy Butler. You have Draymond Green. You're probably going to have a combination of AirPods, Kuminga, Moody, and whoever they decide to trade, if they decide to trade any of them. But the big thing is that you guys have about a 2-year window with those 3 guys before you kind of have to look forward and look past what you are right now. And with them being 23-8 since acquiring Jimmy Butler, it makes you feel comfortable that for a full regular season, this team could be out of the play-in and not have to fight through the play-in to get deep into the playoffs. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but the biggest need right now for the Golden State Warriors is the big man. Quentin Post, as a 25-year-old rookie, came in and had very, very good spot minutes throughout the regular season, but was pretty much unplayable during the playoffs. Kevon Looney's always going to come in the playoffs and give them big minutes. Tracy Jackson-Davis, same thing, was just getting spot minutes. They love to run the small ball with Draymond at the 5 and Jimmy Butler at the 4, But the problem is a lot of teams in the NBA today are going back to the double big lineup. Even the Minnesota Timberwolves, where Julius Randle is not a big, he is a bigger, stronger four, and they just simply couldn't handle the difference between them. Even though Rudy Gobert is not the best offensive player, they had a size mismatch. For the series, the Minnesota Timberwolves shot about 63% from the floor and 42% from three. You simply are not going to win a series if your opponents are hitting basically any shot they want. And that speaks a lot because of the defense of Draymond Green, of Jimmy Butler, and it just simply wasn't enough. They had nobody that could guard Anthony Edwards, even though he didn't, like mentioned before, have a huge playoff series. They simply forced the ball out of Anthony Edwards' hands, and everybody else made up the difference for him. They even had the pep talk from Mike Conley, basically telling the team, hey, I'm in my 17th season. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be playing in the NBA. I want to win a championship. And even though Mike Conley at this point in his career is not a very impactful player on the floor, his voice in the locker room is huge for this young team. It even had him putting out Shea kind of quotes.
12 minutes now stands between you guys in the Western Conference Finals. How do you close it out?
We just got to stay consistent.
My whole life is consistent. Everything I do.
These playoffs are now wide open after both the Cleveland Cavaliers and Boston Celtics lose in the second round. At this point in time, it feels like anybody could win a championship. Even as mentioned before, the OKC Thunder, who a lot of people had as the favorite to win this season, are kind of struggling and are playing a Game 7 against the Denver Nuggets tomorrow. So this is a season unlike any other for this young Minnesota Timberwolves team to show up, to win, and get Anthony Edwards his first ring, get Julius Randle his first ring, and of course, get Mike Conley his first ring.